Little Red Riding Hood. Once upon a time, long ago, well, maybe not so long ago, there was a little girl who lived with her mother. Local folk called her Little Red Riding Hood because she often wore a red cloak with a hood that she loved a lot. She was easy to recognize even when she was walking through the woods, picking strawberries or hazelnuts. One fine day, her mother called her and said, "Little Red Riding Hood, your grandmother isn't well. Can you take this basket to her? I've made her a delicious lunch. Tasty donuts, soft cheese, and fresh fruit." Little Red Riding Hood quickly came, took the basket, and went out. She loved her grandmother very much. As her mother waved goodbye, she gave her some simple advice. Remember, don't talk to anyone. Always stay on the path in the woods. And don't get distracted because your grandmother is waiting for you. Promise? And Little Red Riding Hood raised her hand and said, "I promise, Mummy." Holding the basket tightly, she crossed the fenced-off garden and took the path that led through the woods to her grandmother's house. Humming, she started picking flowers to give to her grandmother. Cha-la-la, cha-la-la. She was so entranced by the beauty of all the nature around her that she didn't notice two enormous yellow eyes watching her from behind a bush. More and more happily, she went on her way, forgetting her mother's wise advice. All of a sudden, she was brought to a halt as a big grey wolf appeared and asked,
"Where are you going, little girl?"
She politely replied, "I'm going to my grandmother's. She's sick. But who are you?" Little Red Riding Hood had never seen a wolf before. The wolf, sniffing the basket and the girl hungrily, didn't answer, but asked another question.
What a delicious smell. But are you sure this is the shortest way to your grandmother's house? Yes? Listen, let's have a race. If you take that path and get there first, you'll win a nice prize.
Little Red Riding Hood was very innocent. "What prize?" she asked.
Don't worry, you'll see. It'll be lots of fun. 1, 2, go!
The wolf dashed off like a bolt of lightning. Whoosh! How strange! He didn't even say 3, and that wolf is so fast! The little girl was surprised, but she finished picking the flowers and carried on walking. Meanwhile, the wolf reached her grandmother's house and began knocking loudly. Inside, her grandmother timidly asked, "Who is it?" The wolf, changing his voice, said, "It's your granddaughter." The grandmother added, "Isn't the door open?" He flung open the door and pounced on the bed, gobbling up the grandmother, nightgown, bonnet and all. Meanwhile, Little Red Riding Hood reached her grandmother's cottage and, finding the door open, went in and approached the bed. "Dear grandmother, you left the door open. It's a good thing I got here. How are you?" The wolf answered in a soft voice, "I'm fine." The little girl looked at the bed and said, "Grandma, what big ears you have!" The wolf, untroubled, replied, "All the better to hear you with, my dear." The little girl looked closer and added, "Grandma, what big eyes you have!" The wolf, trying to hide, answered, "All the better to see you with, my dear." Little Red Riding Hood came even closer and noticed a great big paw sticking out from under the blanket. "But what big hands you have!" she said. The wolf, a bit irritated, said, "Have you finished criticizing? But my dear, they're all the better to hug you with." By now, the little girl was frightened. She cried out, "And what a big mouth you have!" The wolf, tired of the questions, let out a huge roar, jumped out of the bed and gobbled up Little Red Riding Hood, shoes, cloak and all. And then, full to bursting, he flopped back onto the bed and started to snore like a chainsaw. Meanwhile, the hunter, a close friend of the grandmother and of the woods, was approaching, singing cheerfully.
I am the hunting hunter.
Passing by the grandmother's house, he called out,
Grandmother? Grandma, is everything all right? Sounds like someone's had a great big meal. She's snoring really loudly.
But as he opened the door, he saw the huge belly of an enormous wolf snoring much louder, as if he had swallowed a whole set of cooking pots. The hunter immediately realized what had happened. With a knife, he cut open the wolf's belly, and out came Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother, happy but a bit squashed. Then he filled the wolf's belly with heavy stones and carefully sewed it up, without waking him. And do you know what they did next? No? Well, I'm here to tell you. Little Red Riding Hood and the hunter dumped the still sleeping wolf under a tree, and then returned to the grandmother's house, where she had laid out all the delicious treats prepared by Little Red Riding Hood's mother. The hunter, Little Red Riding Hood, and her grandmother all ate happily together, celebrating the brave hunter who had saved them. Hooray for the hunter! Hooray for Mummy, who made all these delicious goodies!